Well, tomorrow we head for Israel. I wish all of you were going with us. However, I know that's not always possible. However, if you want to make plans ahead of time, our next trip is scheduled for around the 1st of May. So you may begin to look forward to that. We'll give you all the details as soon as we get back from this one. Nevertheless, I've always got that wonderful feeling that I'm headed toward my second home when I get on that plane and we head toward the nation of Israel. This will be, 24 times, I think. I have been there, and my ties are getting closer, not looser. So, of course, this time is going to be very special above all others. And that is this coming Saturday evening, I will be speaking on the subject, Israel's Future, according to Bible prophecy. That will take place at the pavilion in the Kalal building between Joppa Street and Agrippa Street in downtown Jerusalem. It promises to be a wonderful time. So if you have friends or relatives in Israel, make sure you let them know, because it will be a session they will not want to miss, and we're looking forward to it. Also, of course, we will be kicking off our Jerusalem Prophecy College this coming Saturday night as well. So it's a very historic and exciting time, and I also believe a prophetic time. Now, this is all being motivated by the prophecies of the Bible. The Bible prophesies a peace agreement in Israel that will mark the beginning of the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon. And, of course, it's at the Battle of Armageddon that the second coming of Christ to the earth will take place. Now, let's pause a moment. Let's get our arms around this, because this is not a little deal. It's not a medium-sized deal. This is a huge deal. We're talking about one of the greatest prophetic fulfillments in the last, since mankind was created in all human history, 6,000 years ago now. Okay, so what are we talking about here? The Bible prophesies that there will be a 7-year agreement. Now, scholars have puzzled over, why does it say the Antichrist will confirm the covenant for 7 years? What is the covenant? Why 7 years? What's this all about? Well, as I have studied this through the years, I've come to know that the covenant referred to here is the Abrahamic covenant, the promise of God in Genesis 15:18, that the land called the Holy Land will be the homeland for the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob forever. God promised this 4,000 years ago, and he's still keeping his promise today. This peace agreement that is being pushed by President Obama, by John Kerry, and many others, of course, this peace agreement calls for Israel surrendering a considerable portion of her promised land and settling for just a fraction of what God originally promised. Apparently, Benjamin Netanyahu is willing to enter into such an agreement. However, there are some things he will not do. There are some lines he will not cross. One of those is to surrender any of Jerusalem to any foreign entity. But yet Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinians, says there will be no peace unless the Palestinians have Jerusalem as their capital. Well, these negotiations have been ongoing for 3 months now, August, September, October, 3 months. And apparently there's some things going on behind the scenes, because Prime Minister Netanyahu was with Secretary of State John Kerry for 7 hours last week. Then there was this little note in the news today that he was on the phone speaking with President Obama yesterday, I believe it was, or maybe it was this morning. The reports pour in that the peace negotiations are ongoing, that they are continuing at a very steady, if not rapid, pace. So the one thing that has been floated out there is that there may be an interim agreement, but there probably cannot be a final agreement. If the Palestinians insist on East Jerusalem as their capital, that's a deal breaker, because Netanyahu says we're never surrendering Jerusalem, and they shouldn't. However, the Palestinians continue to insist they've got to have East Jerusalem as their capital. Why? It's never been their capital. Why do they have to have it? Because. Because why? Just because. Well, the real because is because they understand that Jerusalem is the heart and the soul of the Jewish nation. And if they're able to split Jerusalem in two, and in particular control the side of the first and second temple, then they will have dramatically weakened the nation of Israel. That's what this is really all about. The Palestinians have no real attachment to Jerusalem. Yes, they do have the Al-Aqsa Mosque there and the Dome of the Rock there, but it's been there for many years and wasn't that special to them until the Jewish people moved in and built the nation of Israel. Now then, there's a contest going on. Okay, why am I talking about this today? I know we talk about it a lot on this program, but the reason I'm talking about it today is because something has shifted. It appears that there is movement in the talks. I mean, 7 hours with Secretary of State Kerry last week, on the phone with President Obama now, and then this statement by Mahmoud Abbas. The title of the article coming from the Jerusalem Post, Abbas softens objection to interim peace deal with Israel. Now, you've probably heard me say already that Yossi Beilin, the foremost negotiator at the Oslo Accords back in 1993, that he had a debate earlier this year with an Arab, and they were discussing the possibility of an interim agreement because Beilin said, I know Netanyahu. He is not going to surrender on the Jerusalem issue. So the best you can hope for is an interim agreement that will possibly put off the Jerusalem issue for later. Well, apparently that message has come through loud and clear, solid as a rock, because here's what we're reading from the Jerusalem Post today. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas is softening his resistance to an interim agreement in ongoing peace talks with Israel, Israel Radio reported on Tuesday. That would be today. Abbas has thus far rejected such an agreement, insisting on a final status deal that would include arrangements on the contentious issues of Jerusalem and the Palestinian right of return. In his speech to the United Nations General Assembly in September, Abbas emphatically rejected the idea of an interim agreement. We reaffirm that we refuse to enter into a vortex of a new interim agreement that becomes eternalized, or to enter into transitional arrangements that will become a fixed rule rather than an urgent exception. Our objective is to achieve a permanent and comprehensive agreement and a peace treaty with the states of Palestine and Israel that resolves all outstanding issues and answers all questions, which allows us to officially declare an end of conflict and claims, the Palestinian leader stated. According to the Israel Radio report, Abbas has toned down his opposition to an interim deal after 3 months of negotiations and is no longer rejecting out of hand the possibility of such an agreement, despite his public pronouncements. Okay, now here's where I don't want you to miss this. The Bible prophesies the Antichrist will confirm the Abrahamic covenant with many for 7-year period. The Bible also prophesies that Jerusalem will stay under Israeli control. The Bible also prophesies that the Temple Mount will be placed under a sharing arrangement. The Bible also prophesies that the West Bank, the area called Judea-Samaria, is going to be placed under foreign control, which means under Palestinian control. So we can see that the Palestinians are getting some of what they want, but not all of what they want. Now, it does appear this ends up being an interim agreement, which means, okay, you get this now. Some other things we cannot agree on. We'll have to wait till later. Now, Abbas said, I don't want to enter into an interim agreement that later on becomes eternalized. In other words, it will move into a permanent thing, and we will have lost in the contest. So how do you stop that? If you're going to agree to an interim agreement, and yet you don't want it to become eternalized, what do? You probably have to have a commitment to a timetable, such as a 7-year commitment okay, we will revisit this thing in 7 years. We will solve all the outstanding issues in 7 years. It certainly looks like that's where we're headed right now. If this happens to the letter, this prophetic fulfillment is going to be so astronomical, so mind-boggling, that it will become undeniable to any person who is honest at all in their assessment of things of this nature. Okay, so Abbas is apparently moving to embrace an interim agreement. Now, things could move fast. Remember, 7 hours with Kerry, on the phone with President Obama. Abbas saying, okay, let's talk about an interim agreement. It appears that they've beat their head against the wall for 3 months. Everybody knows what's negotiable and what's not. What's negotiable has probably already been negotiated. What's not is not going to be. So now the time has come to say, all right, what's the agreement? The news reports coming from the Kerry-Netanyahu talks for 7 hours said they did not discuss Iran. So that means they were discussing the peace agreement. And apparently, Kerry said to Netanyahu, tell me not what you want, tell me what you need, and we will work together to make it happen. So somehow, some way, it appears that we may be moving in the end game. It's not impossible that within a month or two, we could get a breakthrough announcement. We have a deal. It's not impossible. It could happen in a few days, seeing that they spent 7 hours together, seeing that Prime Minister Netanyahu was on the phone with President Obama within the last 24 hours. It's not impossible there's going to be an announcement made right away. I don't know whether that's going to happen or not. The odds are it'll be closer to the deadline. However, we really don't know that. Now, in an interview with the Jerusalem Post earlier this month, Justice Minister Tzipi Livni, who is serving as Israel's chief negotiator in peace talks with the Palestinians, denied that she was seeking an interim agreement. There's been a lot of accusations that that's really where Israel's trying to go. Hardline Likud deputy ministers Danny Danon and Ze'ev Elkin had accused Livni of working on achieving an interim deal with the PA that would create a Palestinian state in temporary borders. Livni told the Post, my goal is an agreement that will end the conflict and all claims from both sides. I have never used the term interim agreement, but she didn't really deny it, did she? We'll be back.